first class! Pick them up! Now!
I'm not resisting.
Security will handle this. Keep your hands visible.
I own this airline. That can't be true.
Everyone, stand down.
What would you do if a stranger slapped you in front of an entire first-class cabin, then told everyone you were the problem? Grace Mitchell did not scream when Olivia Parker struck her. The sound cracked through the cabin like a dropped plate on marble. For one sharp second, everything stopped. The soft hum of the air vents, the clink of ice in a glass, the quiet rustle of newspapers and expensive coats. Grace's head turned with the force of the slap. Her cheek burned hot, then numb. A red mark began to rise against her dark skin. Olivia stood over her in the aisle, breathing hard through her nose. She was 46, polished, senior, and certain of herself in the way people become when no one has questioned them for too long. Her navy uniform was spotless. Her silver wings caught the cabin light. "You do not belong up here," Olivia said. Her voice was low, but everyone heard it. Grace was 42, dressed in faded jeans, white sneakers, and a soft gray sweater. Nothing flashy, no diamonds, no designer bag. Just a worn leather tote by her feet and a folded boarding pass in her hand. That was all Olivia seemed to see. Not the calm in Grace's eyes. Not the quiet control in her posture. Not the fact that her phone had been buzzing for nearly 10 minutes with calls from the executive office. Olivia snatched the boarding pass from Grace's fingers. Grace reached for it, but stopped herself. She knew what anger looked like on a black woman in a room waiting to misunderstand her. So she stayed still. "Mom," Grace said carefully, "that is my ticket." Olivia gave a short laugh, not amused. "Cruel this?" she said, lifting the pass like it smelled bad. "This is what people bring when they think no one will check." Then she tore it. Once, twice, again. The paper split in her hands, small white pieces drifting down onto the blue carpet between them. A woman in the second row gasped but said nothing. A man in a tan sport coat looked away, then looked back, curious now. Across the aisle, a younger passenger lifted her phone. The camera light blinked on. Olivia pointed at the torn pieces by Grace's shoes. "Pick it up." Grace looked down at the scraps. Her seat number was still visible on one corner. 2A first class. She looked back at Olivia. "I will not get on the floor." The words were quiet. That made them stronger. Olivia's jaw tightened. Her face flushed pink beneath her makeup. "You people always make this harder than it needs to be." The cabin changed after that sentence. A few passengers shifted. Some uncomfortable. Some entertained. Some already choosing sides because choosing the truth would have cost them courage. Grace felt the weight of every stare. She also felt something deeper, a memory of her father, a postal worker in Baltimore, telling her when she was a girl that dignity was not something people gave you. It was something you refused to surrender. So she stood there, cheek burning, heart steady, hands open. Olivia leaned closer. "Get on your knees and pick up your fake ticket." Grace took one slow breath. No, one word. Clean, final. Olivia's eyes widened, as if refusal itself were an insult. Behind her, a man muttered, "Just do what she says." Another voice whispered, "These scams are everywhere now." Grace heard them all. She remembered them all. And still, she did not move. Because the woman they were humiliating was not a scammer. She was Grace Mitchell, Chief Executive Officer of Skyline Airways. And in a few minutes, every person in that cabin would understand exactly what they had chosen to ignore. For a moment, the only sound in first class was Grace breathing. Slowly, carefully, as if every breath had to be managed before someone called it aggression. Olivia Parker looked around the cabin, searching faces for approval. She found it too quickly. A man near the window nodded as if she had restored order. A woman with pearl earrings pulled her purse closer to her body. Another passenger whispered something to his wife. And both of them stared at Grace like she had carried trouble onto the plane in her tote bag. That was how prejudice worked sometimes. It did not need proof. It only needed an audience. In seat 1B, Ashley Monroe lifted her phone higher. She was 29, blonde, polished, and always ready when ordinary cruelty could be turned into contempt. Her lips parted in a look of fake concern. Her eyes, however, were bright with opportunity. "Oh my gosh," she whispered to her live stream. "There is a woman in first class refusing to leave a seat that clearly is not hers. The flight attendant is trying so hard to stay professional." Grace heard the words. She did not look at the camera. She knew cameras rarely saved people in the moment. Sometimes they only made the humiliation permanent. Olivia stepped closer again. "You are delaying this flight," she said. "You understand that, right? These people paid real money to be here." Grace looked at the torn paper on the floor. So did I. A few passengers reacted. Not loudly, just enough. A breath, a scoff, a small laugh from somewhere behind her. Olivia's face sharpened. She jabbed one finger toward Grace's chest, stopping just short of touching her. "Do not get smart with me." Grace kept her hands at her sides. "Open, visible. I am asking you to verify my seat through the system. I already know what the system says." "No," Grace said softly. "You know what you decided before you checked." That sentence landed hard. Olivia's eyes flickered. For the first time, not with fear, but with the insult of being seen. Ashley's live stream comments moved so fast she could barely read them. Still, certain words caught her eye. Fraud. Entitled remove her. Call police. Ashley turned the camera slightly, framing Grace's face and the red mark on her cheek. "She is still arguing," Ashley told her viewers. "This is exactly why flights get delayed." Across the aisle, an older black man in a brown jacket shifted forward. His name was Leonard Brooks, retired school principal, 71 years old. He had seen too many rooms go silent at the wrong time. "Excuse me," he said, voice rough but steady. "That lady has been calm the whole time. Maybe someone should check the ticket before this goes any further." Olivia turned on him. "Sir, please remain seated." "I am seated." "Then stay out of crew matters." Leonard's jaw tightened. He wanted to say more. His wife, sitting beside him, touched his wrist. Not because she disagreed, but because she knew what happened when authority felt challenged. Grace saw that small touch. She understood it. Fear often wore the face of caution. From the front galley, a younger flight attendant named Hannah Price stood frozen with a service tablet in her hand. She was 26, new to premium routes, still young enough to believe rules were supposed to protect people equally. Her eyes moved from Grace to the torn boarding pass, then to Olivia. "Olivia," Hannah said quietly, "we can still pull up the passenger manifest." Olivia did not even turn fully toward her. "Not now. But if seat 2A is assigned to her, we should know before security gets here." The cabin seemed to lean toward that sentence. Olivia's shoulders stiffened. "Hannah," she said, "each syllable cold, go back to the galley." Hannah swallowed. Her fingers tightened around the tablet. She looked at Grace for half a second, and in that look there was apology, shame, and fear of losing a job she had worked hard to get. Then Olivia lifted the interphone. Her voice changed instantly. Professional, controlled, official. "Gate operations, this is Senior Flight Attendant Parker on Flight 447. We need a supervisor on board immediately. Possible fraudulent boarding document, and passenger refusing crew instruction in first class." Grace closed her eyes for one brief second. Not in defeat, in discipline. Her phone buzzed again inside the tote bag. Another call, another message. The board was waiting, legal was waiting, the company was waiting. But Grace did not reach for it, not yet, because everyone in that cabin still believed this was about one seat. They had no idea it was becoming evidence. The supervisor arrived with a hard walk and a tighter face. Harold Bennett stepped through the aircraft door like a man already annoyed at the person he had not yet met. He was 54, broad-shouldered, gray at the temples, and carrying a radio clipped to his belt. 28 years in airport operations had given him confidence. Too much of it. He looked at Olivia first, not Grace. That small choice said almost everything. "What have we got?" Harold asked. Olivia straightened, relieved to have backup. Passenger in first class with questionable documents. Refusing to comply. Became hostile when asked to verify her seat. Grace felt the words move through the cabin like smoke. Hostile. Questionable. Refusing. Each one built a story that did not need her permission. Harold finally turned toward Grace. His eyes moved from her sneakers to her sweater. then to the torn boarding pass on the floor. He did not hide the judgment well. Maybe he did not think he had to. "Mom," he said, voice clipped, "I need to see your boarding pass and photo ID." Grace looked down at the scraps. She tore my boarding pass. Olivia laughed once, sharp and dry, because it was fake. Harold held up a hand, as if fairness was a performance he had mastered. "Let's keep this simple. Do you have government-issued identification?" "Yes." "Then present it." Grace moved slowly toward her tote bag. The moment her fingers touched the leather strap, Harold's voice snapped through the cabin. "Hands where I can see them." The command hit harder than it needed to. Several passengers leaned back. Ashley's phone moved closer. Grace stopped. Her hand hovered in the air. "I was reaching for my wallet," she said. "Do not reach into any bag until security is present." The words were procedural. The tone was not. Leonard Brooks shifted in his seat again. His wife held his wrist, but this time he gently moved her hand aside. "She is trying to show you what you asked for," Leonard said. Harold did not look at him. "Sir, I need you to remain quiet." "I have been quiet for too many years," Leonard said, softer now, almost to himself. That sentence stayed in the air. Hannah heard it from the galley. It touched something in her. Her own mother had worked customer service at a hospital in Des Moines. She used to say the hardest part of a uniform was remembering. It did not make you better than the person across the counter. Hannah looked down at the tablet in her hand. The passenger manifest was open. Her thumb trembled over the search bar. Olivia saw her. "Hannah," she said, one word. A warning. Hannah froze. Harold spoke into his radio. "Gate security to aircraft, first-class cabin. Possible document fraud. Passenger non-compliant?" Grace's phone buzzed again in the tote bag. This time it did not stop after one vibration. It buzzed, paused, buzzed again. Ashley noticed it and whispered to her viewers, "Her phone keeps going off. She's probably calling someone to coach her through the scam." A businessman in row 3 chuckled. He was in his late 60s, wearing a navy blazer and a gold wedding ring, worn thin from decades of use. He had spent his life believing he was fair. He donated to charities. He tipped well. He opened doors for women. But fairness for him had always been easiest when it cost him nothing. "Some people just refuse to follow rules," he said. Grace turned her head slightly toward him. Not angry, just tired. "Rules without truth are just weapons," she said. The man looked away first. Harold's jaw tightened. "Mom, I am going to explain this once. If security determines your documents are not valid, you will be removed from this aircraft. If you resist, airport police may be called. That can lead to charges. Do you understand?" Grace nodded. "I understand the words." Harold frowned. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means I understand what you are saying. I also understand what you have not asked. And what is that?" Grace looked at Olivia, then at Ashley's camera, then at the passengers who had already decided the ending. "You have not asked why I am so calm." No one answered. The cabin seemed smaller now, the ceiling lower, the air colder. At the front door, 2 security officers appeared. One was a tall man named Eric Malloy, square jaw, tired eyes, hand resting near his belt. Beside him stood Officer Daniel Reyes, 38, airport police, neat uniform, careful face. He took in the scene with one practiced sweep. The torn ticket, the red mark, the phones. The woman standing still while everyone else talked about her. "What is the issue?" Officer Reyes asked. Harold answered too fast. "Fraudulent first-class access, refusal to comply, possible disorderly conduct." Grace did not move. Officer Reyes looked at her. "Mom, are you willing to show identification?" "Yes," Grace said. "I have been willing from the beginning." Olivia scoffed. Reyes glanced at the scraps on the floor, then at Olivia. "And the boarding pass?" Olivia lifted her chin. "I destroyed it because it was clearly fake." For the first time, Officer Reyes did not look convinced. Grace saw it, a crack. Small, but real. Then Harold stepped in, eager to seal it. "Officer, we need her removed before departure." Grace's phone buzzed again. Inside the open edge of the tote, the screen lit up just long enough for Hannah to see the caller name. Skyline Board Office. Hannah's face went pale. Hannah stared at the glowing screen inside Grace's tote and felt the floor tilt beneath her. Skyline Board Office. The words were there for less than a second, then the screen went dark again. But they stayed in Hannah's mind. sharp, impossible to ignore. She looked at Grace more carefully now. Not at the jeans, not at the sneakers, not at the plain gray sweater, at her stillness. At the way she measured every breath, at the way she seemed less like a cornered passenger and more like a woman waiting for everyone else to finish making their mistake. Officer Reyes noticed Hannah's face. "Miss," he said, turning slightly toward her, "is there something you need to add?" Hannah opened her mouth. Olivia's eyes cut toward her. Hard. Warning. Hannah felt the old fear rise in her throat. She was new. She needed this job. Her father's medical bills were still sitting on her kitchen table back in Kansas City. One wrong word against a senior attendant, and she could be sent back to economy routes, or worse. But then she saw Grace's cheek. The mark was darker now. Real. Undeniable. Hannah swallowed. "I think we should verify the passenger manifest before removing her," she said. The cabin went still. Olivia laughed, but this time the sound came too quickly. "We already know what happened." "No," Hannah said, her voice small but steady. "We know what you said happened." That changed the air. Ashley's phone jerked toward Hannah. "Oh, wow," Ashley whispered to her live stream. "Now another flight attendant is getting involved." Harold stepped closer to Hannah. "Young lady, this is not your call." Hannah looked down at the tablet. Her thumb moved before fear could stop it. She typed Grace Mitchell into the search field. The tablet loaded, slowly. Too slowly. Everyone waited. The plane seemed to breathe around them. Then the result appeared. Seat 2A, Grace Evelyn Mitchell. First class confirmed. Special handling code. Executive priority. Hannah's face went pale again. She did not yet understand the code, but she knew enough to know it was not fake. "Officer," Hannah said, holding the tablet out. "The manifest shows her in seat 2A. Officer Reyes took one step closer and looked. Harold leaned in, then stiffened. Olivia's mouth opened, but no words came out for half a beat. Then she recovered. "That does not prove anything," she snapped. "Records can be altered. Scammers are sophisticated." Grace finally looked at her with something like sadness. "Olivia," she said quietly, "listen to yourself." The use of her first name made Olivia flinch. "How do you know my name?" Grace looked at her name tag. "Because it is on your uniform," a few passengers murmured. Not laughter, something closer to discomfort. Officer Reyes turned to Harold. "Why was the boarding pass destroyed if the manifest confirms the seat?" Harold's face reddened. "Officer, we are dealing with a disruptive passenger." "She has not raised her voice," Leonard Brooks said. "She was slapped," his wife added, her voice trembling but clear. "We all saw it." The older businessman in the navy blazer looked down at his lap. The certainty that had protected him minutes earlier began to crack. He had cheered rules, but now the rules looked less like order and more like cover. Ashley's stream kept growing. Her screen showed comments shifting. "Wait, she really had the seat. Why did the attendant hit her? This looks bad. Someone saved the video." Ashley saw the change and adjusted her voice at once. "Okay, you guys. This is getting more complicated," she whispered. Grace heard that too. Complicated. People loved that word when the truth became inconvenient. Olivia stepped toward Grace again, her control slipping. "You still refused crew instructions." "I refuse to kneel. That is not what I meant." "It is exactly what you said." The words hit like a door closing. Officer Reyes straightened. "Miss Parker, I need you to step back." Olivia stared at him. "Excuse me?" "Step back." It was the first command all day that was not aimed at Grace. Olivia moved back one step. Just one. But her face showed the injury of losing control in front of people who had watched her hold it. Then Captain William Foster appeared at the cockpit door. He was 61, tall, silver-haired, and dressed in the kind of authority that made people sit up straighter. His uniform was pressed. His face was calm, but his eyes were irritated before he even knew the facts. "What is going on in my cabin?" he asked. Olivia turned toward him like rescue had arrived. "Captain, this passenger created a security issue. She refused to comply, questioned my authority, and delayed departure." Captain Foster looked at Grace. Not long, not deeply, just enough to place her in the story Olivia had already written. "Mom," he said, "when a crew member gives a lawful instruction, you follow it. We do not debate safety on board an aircraft." Grace held his gaze. Was it a safety instruction when she told me to get on my knees? The captain's expression tightened. Harold spoke quickly. Captain, we need to remove her and reset the cabin. Officer Reyes looked from Grace to the tablet in Hannah's hand. Captain, the manifest confirms her seat. Captain Foster did not look at the tablet. My crew says she is a problem. That is enough for me. Grace's phone buzzed again. This time, she let it ring. The sound filled the silence. One call after another. A steady pulse from a world beyond the cabin. Captain Foster frowned. Who keeps calling you? Grace looked around the cabin once. At Olivia, at Harold, at Hannah, whose hands were shaking but whose eyes stayed up. Then at Officer Reyes, Grace spoke softly. People who know exactly who I am. Captain Foster heard the phone ringing and mistook calm for arrogance. That was his first mistake. His second was stepping closer to Grace Mitchell, without asking one honest question. Mom, he said, voice low enough to sound controlled, loud enough for the cabin to hear, I do not care who you think you know. On this aircraft, my crew's judgment comes first. Grace looked at him for a long second. She had met men like him in boardrooms, men who used procedure when they meant power, men who said safety when they meant obedience, men who believed authority became truth the moment it wore a badge, a title, or 4 gold stripes on a sleeve. I respect crew authority, Grace said. I do not respect abuse. Olivia folded her arms. There it is, always playing the victim. A murmur moved through the first-class cabin. Ashley's phone caught all of it. Her face had changed now. The confidence of her commentary had thinned. She could see the live chat turning against Olivia, against Harold, against the captain. But she kept recording. Attention was attention. Shame could be edited later. Officer Reyes raised one hand slightly. Captain, before anyone is removed, I recommend we verify her identification and document the condition of the passenger. The condition of the passenger, Olivia snapped. Reyes looked at the red mark on Grace's cheek. Yes, the condition of the passenger. Olivia's lips pressed tight. Harold stepped in, trying to regain control. Officer, this is an airline operational decision. She can sort it out at the gate. Grace turned to Harold. You keep saying sort it out later, she said. That is what people say when the harm is happening now, but the accountability is inconvenient. Hannah felt those words in her chest. So did Leonard Brooks. So did his wife, who had spent 40 years teaching Sunday school children to speak truth even when their voices shook. Her hand rose slowly. I saw the slap, she said. The cabin went still again. Olivia stared at her. Mom, you may not have seen the full context. I saw enough, the woman replied. I saw a passenger standing still. I saw you hit her. I saw you tear her ticket. And I saw people, including me, sit here too long before saying anything. Her voice cracked at the end. That crack did more than any accusation could. It made the moment human. Grace looked at her and nodded once. Not forgiveness, recognition. Captain Foster's face darkened. He did not like losing the room. Not to an officer, not to an elderly woman, not to Grace. All right, he said sharply. This flight will not become a courtroom. Ms. Mitchell, gather your belongings. You are being denied boarding based on crew safety concerns. Officer Reyes turned toward him. Captain, I am not comfortable removing her under that basis without reviewing her ID. I am the captain. And I am law enforcement, Reyes said. We are not dragging a passenger off an aircraft because someone destroyed her boarding pass and now says, trust me. The sentence hit the cabin like a gavel. Short, clear, public. Olivia's face burned. Harold reached for his radio, but before he could speak, it crackled alive. Harold, this is Denise Carter in regional operations. What is happening on Flight 447? We are getting social media alerts and calls from corporate communications. Harold grabbed the radio too fast. Denise, we have a disruptive passenger issue. It is contained. A pause. Then Denise's voice returned, tighter. Name a passenger? Harold looked at Grace. Grace looked back. He hesitated. Grace Mitchell, he said. The radio went silent. Not static. Silence. Then a different voice came on, male, controlled, unfamiliar to most of the cabin. Harold, this is Martin Keller from Corporate Legal. Do not remove that passenger. Repeat, do not remove Grace Mitchell from that aircraft. Harold's hand froze around the radio. Captain Foster stared at it. Olivia blinked. Ashley whispered, oh my God. The cabin heard every word. Leonard leaned back slowly, as if the air had finally returned to his lungs. Officer Reyes looked at Grace. His eyes changed. Not fully, not yet, but enough. Harold forced a laugh that fooled no one. "Possible miscommunication," he said into the radio. "We have not confirmed identity." Martin Keller's voice sharpened. "Then confirm it now, carefully." Grace's phone rang again. This time, she reached for her tote. Officer Reyes did not stop her. Neither did Harold. Neither did the captain. Grace pulled out the phone. The screen lit her face from below, highlighting the red handprint Olivia had left there. The caller name was visible for one clean second before she answered. Chairman Richard Hale. Grace pressed speaker. "Grace," the man's voice said, tense and deeply concerned. "Are you safe?" No one moved. No one breathed loudly. Grace held the phone at chest level. "I am physically standing," she said. "But I have been struck by a senior flight attendant, had my boarding pass destroyed, and I am currently being threatened with removal from one of our aircraft." The word "are" moved through the cabin like a storm front. Captain Foster's mouth opened. Olivia's arms fell to her sides. Harold's face drained. Chairman Hale spoke again, slower now. "Everyone listening should understand this clearly. You are speaking with Grace Evelyn Mitchell, Chief Executive Officer of Skyline Airways." The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of everything they could no longer deny. Olivia Parker looked as if the cabin floor had opened beneath her. For several seconds, she did not speak. Her eyes moved from Grace's phone to Grace's face, then to the red mark on Grace's cheek. It was the first time she seemed to truly see the person she had hit. Not the sweater, not the sneakers, not the story she had invented. The person, Ms. Mitchell, Olivia said, and the title came out broken. "I did not know." Grace held the phone in her hand, speaker still on. Chairman Richard Hale remained silent on the line, but his presence filled the cabin like another witness. Grace looked at Olivia. "That is the problem," she said. "You believed you did not need to know. No one moved." Ashley's live stream had turned into chaos. The comments rushed upward faster than her eyes could follow. Some viewers were furious. Some were shocked. Some were doing what people often do when truth arrives too late. They were trying to erase what they had believed 5 minutes earlier. Ashley lowered her phone a little, then raised it again. Her hand was shaking now. Harold Bennett cleared his throat. "Ms. Mitchell, I want to personally apologize for the confusion." Grace turned to him. "Confusion?" The word was soft, dangerous. Harold swallowed. For the breakdown in process. Grace took one step closer. Not enough to threaten, just enough to make him feel the weight of her attention. "Process did not slap me," she said. "Process did not tear my boarding pass. Process did not order me to keep my hands visible when I tried to show identification. People did that." Harold's mouth closed. Officer Reyes stood still, but his face had changed completely. He had handled enough incidents to know when a story collapsed under its own weight. His hand was no longer near his belt. It rested at his side. "Miss Mitchell," he said, "do you want medical assistance?" Grace touched her cheek lightly for the first time. The skin was warm under her fingers. "No, not yet." Chairman Hale spoke through the phone. "Grace, corporate legal is already on this. Communications is monitoring the live stream. But the board is convening now." That sentence sent a ripple through first class. Board, legal, live stream. Words that sounded distant in ordinary life. Words that now sat in the aisle with them. Captain Foster stepped forward, but his confidence had started to crack. His shoulders remained square, yet his voice had lost its iron. "Miss Mitchell, I want to say clearly that my only concern was flight safety." Grace looked at him for a long moment. "You were told my seat was confirmed. You were told my boarding pass had been destroyed. You were told I had been struck. And you still chose to remove me." Captain Foster's jaw moved once. No answer came. Hannah stood near the galley, eyes wet, tablet clutched to her chest. Grace saw her and softened just slightly. "Hannah?" Grace said. The young attendant stiffened. "Yes, Mom. Thank you for checking the manifest." Hannah's face crumpled with relief and shame at the same time. "I should have done it sooner." Grace nodded. "Most people should do the right thing sooner. What matters now is what they do next." Leonard Brooks lowered his head. as if the words were meant for him too. His wife wiped at one eye. The businessman in the navy blazer kept staring at his hands. He was thinking of his grandchildren now, thinking of what they might have seen if they were watching, thinking of how quickly he had mistaken cruelty for order. Olivia's breathing grew uneven. "I could lose my job," she whispered. Grace did not look away. "You should have thought about that before using your job to take someone else's dignity." The sentence was not shouted. It did not need to be. Olivia's face folded. She put one hand over her mouth, but the tears came anyway. They were not graceful tears. They were frightened, exposed, the kind that arrive when consequences finally become real. Grace turned back to the phone. "Richard, I need you to listen carefully." "I'm listening," Hale said. "I want this flight held at the gate. I want corporate legal, human resources, passenger rights, and operations on a recorded conference line within 10 minutes. I want every employee involved identified, and I want all passenger videos preserved." Harold flinched. Captain Foster looked toward the cockpit, as if wishing he could step back into a world where his words still ended the matter. Grace continued. "This is not only about me." Her voice slowed. The cabin leaned in despite itself. "This is about every passenger who has been questioned because they dressed simply. Every mother ignored when she needed help. Every elderly traveler treated like a burden. Every black passenger asked to prove twice what others prove once." Ashley lowered her phone completely now. For the first time, she was not performing. Grace saw her. "Keep recording," Grace said. Ashley blinked. "What? Keep recording. But this time, tell the truth." Ashley's eyes filled with panic, then something like humility. "Yes, Mom," she whispered. Grace bent down slowly and picked up one torn piece of her boarding pass from the carpet. "Seat 2A. She held it between two fingers. "It's a small piece of paper. A large piece of evidence." Then she looked at Olivia. "You thought this proved I did not belong here." Her voice was quiet. The cabin was silent. "It proves I was here all along." Grace kept the torn boarding pass between her fingers as if it were fragile glass. No one tried to take it from her now. That was how fast power could change a room. A few minutes earlier, the paper had been trash under Olivia Parker's shoe. Now it was evidence. Now people looked at it with fear. Harold Bennett's radio kept crackling, but he did not answer it. He was staring at Grace with the expression of a man trying to remember every word he had said, and wishing he could pull each one back. Captain Foster stood near the cockpit door, rigid and pale. Olivia had stepped into the aisle wall, one hand gripping the edge of a seatback. Her fingers were white at the knuckles. She was not crying loudly anymore. She was breathing in short, uneven pulls, the way people breathe when the world they trusted begins to collapse. Grace looked at Officer Reyes. "Officer, I want the torn ticket documented. I also want the passenger manifest preserved as it appeared before anyone edits or updates anything." Reyes nodded at once. "Yes, Mom." Then he corrected himself, more carefully. "Yes, Ms. Mitchell." Grace appreciated that. Not the title, the care. He turned to Eric Malloy. "Get photos of the ticket fragments, her cheek, and the manifest screen. Note the time. Do not touch anything barehanded." Eric moved quickly now. Professional. Quiet. The mood of law enforcement had shifted from removal to preservation. That shift was small, but everyone felt it. Ashley filmed again, but her voice had lost its shine. "She is asking them to preserve evidence," Ashley said softly. "For those just joining, the woman being accused is the CEO of the airline. The crew did not know that, and honestly, that is part of the point." Her eyes flicked to Grace, almost asking if that was right. Grace did not answer. The truth did not need her permission. Hannah stepped forward, still holding the tablet. "Ms. Mitchell, the manifest is still open. I can keep it on screen until operations locks the record." Olivia looked at her with wounded anger. Hannah stopped helping her. Hannah turned slowly. The fear was still there, but something stronger had risen above it. "I am not helping her," Hannah said. "I am telling the truth." That sentence cut through Olivia more deeply than a shouted accusation would have. Grace watched Hannah and saw a young woman crossing a line inside herself. The kind of line a person remembers for the rest of their life. The first time they refused to hide behind silence. Leonard Brooks whispered, Good for you, child. His wife nodded, tears shining in her eyes. From Grace's phone, Chairman Hale spoke again. Grace, the emergency conference line is active. Corporate legal, human resources, operations, and communications are listening. The cabin stiffened. A quiet chorus of distant voices sounded through the speaker. Grace lifted the phone. This is Grace Mitchell. I am standing in first class on Flight 447 at Gate 12 in Atlanta. I was assaulted by Senior Flight Attendant Olivia Parker after she accused me of using a fake first-class ticket. My boarding pass was taken and destroyed. Ground Supervisor Harold Bennett and Captain William Foster attempted to remove me without reviewing my identification. Captain Foster flinched at his name. Harold closed his eyes. Grace continued. The passenger manifest confirms my seat. Multiple passengers recorded the event. Airport police are present. Evidence is being preserved. A woman's voice came through the line. Calm, legal, precise. Grace, this is Elaine Porter from Corporate Counsel. For the record, do you need medical attention? Not at this moment. Do you wish to press assault charges today? Olivia made a small sound, almost a gasp. Grace turned and looked at her. The cabin waited. This was the moment many people wanted. Punishment. A clean fall. A villain crushed under the weight of her own cruelty. Grace knew that feeling. She was human. Her cheeks still burned. Her hands were steady, but her heart was not untouched. Still, her father's voice came back again. Do not become small because someone treated you small. Grace spoke slowly. I want all legal options preserved. I will decide after a full review. Olivia sagged against the seat. Not free, not safe, but not destroyed in that instant. Grace looked at everyone watching. Accountability is not revenge, she said. It is the truth with consequences. The words moved through the cabin differently than the accusations had. They did not excite people. They settled on them. The businessman in the navy blazer finally stood halfway, then stopped, unsure if he had the right. Miss Mitchell, he said, voice low. I said something earlier. I assumed. I was wrong. Grace looked at him. What will you do next time? He blinked. The question seemed to hurt more than blame. I hope I will speak sooner. Grace nodded once. I hope so too. Then the radio at Harold's belt crackled again. Harold, this is Denise. Corporate has issued an immediate ground hold. No departure until further notice. Also, Human Resources wants Olivia Parker removed from duty pending investigation. Olivia's face went blank. Captain Foster turned sharply toward the radio. Denise continued, voice strained. And Captain Foster is to step away from command pending review. The cockpit door behind him suddenly looked very far away. No one cheered. That made it worse. Consequences had arrived quietly. Olivia Parker heard the words removed from duty and stopped breathing for a second. Her face did not twist in anger this time. It emptied. The authority she had worn like armor slipped from her shoulders, and what remained was a frightened woman in a navy uniform, standing in the aisle with nowhere to hide. Captain Foster took one step back. Denise, he said toward Harold's radio, this is Captain Foster. I need clarification. Denise's voice came through strained and formal. Captain, you are relieved from command pending internal review. A replacement captain is being assigned. Please follow airport operations instructions. The cabin listened to every syllable. Foster's mouth tightened. For 37 years, people had moved when he entered a cockpit. They had trusted his voice over intercoms. They had called him captain with respect. Now one decision, one refusal to look at the facts, had stripped that certainty from him in front of passengers holding phones. He looked at Grace. For the first time, he did not see a disruption. He saw a consequence. Ms. Mitchell, he said, voice rough, I made a judgment call. Grace's eyes did not soften. You made a judgment before you gathered facts. That was all she gave him. It was enough. Harold wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. His radio felt heavier than before, as if every voice coming through it carried a piece of his future. He looked toward the aircraft door, where two operations employees had now appeared. One was a woman in a charcoal blazer, early 40s, composed but pale. Her name tag read Linda Carter. Linda stepped on board carefully, taking in the scene without interrupting it. Her eyes moved to Grace's cheek, to Olivia, to the phone cameras. then to Hannah's tablet. "Ms. Mitchell," Linda said, voice steady. "I am Linda Carter, Gate Operations Supervisor. I am sorry this happened. I know sorry is not enough, but I want to start by saying it plainly." Grace studied her. Linda did not perform concern. She did not rush to excuse anyone. She stood with both hands visible, shoulders straight, face open. Grace nodded once. "Thank you for saying it plainly." Linda turned to Olivia. "Olivia, you need to surrender your crew badge and step off the aircraft with human resources." Olivia recoiled as if struck. "My badge?" "Yes. I have worked here for 22 years. Linda's voice remained calm, and that experience should have made you more careful, not less. The sentence landed quietly, brutally. Hannah looked down, blinking fast. Olivia's hand moved to the silver badge clipped near her chest. Her fingers hovered there, trembling. That badge had once felt like proof that she mattered, proof that she belonged in polished cabins, behind velvet ropes, among people who called her by name. Now it felt like a witness against her. She unclipped it. The small sound of metal releasing was almost nothing. Everyone heard it. Linda accepted the badge without ceremony. "Please step off the aircraft." Olivia looked at Grace. Her eyes were wet, but Grace saw something else under the tears. Not full remorse, not yet. More like terror meeting the first edge of understanding. "I am sorry," Olivia whispered. Grace held her gaze. "I hope one day you understand what you are sorry for." Olivia's face broke. She stepped into the jet bridge with an HR representative walking beside her. No handcuffs. No dramatic exit. Just a woman leaving the place where she had thought power protected her. That quietness made it feel more real. "Harold, when is next?" Linda turned to him. "Harold, Regional Operations wants you off this flight as well." Harold's eyes widened. "Linda, let's not overreact." Linda did not blink. "You called security without reviewing the manifest. You escalated against a passenger who was trying to comply. You ignored a junior crew member who raised a valid concern." Harold's face tightened. "I followed what I believed was proper procedure." Grace spoke before Linda could answer. "Proper procedure begins with verification, not assumption." Harold looked away. Officer Reyes stepped to the side, giving Harold a clear path to the door. That small courtesy was more than Harold had given Grace. Harold noticed it. Shame flickered across his face. As he walked out, Leonard Brooks leaned forward slightly. "Sir," Leonard said, not unkindly, "next time slow down before you use your power." Harold stopped for half a second. Then he nodded once, barely. But he nodded. The cabin was no longer loud. No one cheered. No one clapped. Even Ashley's viewers watched through a silence that felt heavier than outrage. Grace turned toward the passengers. "I want everyone here to understand something," she said. "This is not a victory lap. A woman lost her duty status today. A captain lost command. A supervisor may lose his career. Those are serious things." She paused. The air vents hummed softly above her. But a person was hit, humiliated, accused, nearly removed. And too many people were comfortable until they learned I had power. No one met her eyes for long. Grace looked at Ashley's camera. That is the lesson. Respect should not depend on who someone turns out to be. Her voice slowed. It should be there before you know. Linda Carter ordered the jet bridge door kept open while the replacement crew was called. Outside the aircraft, the terminal had become its own quiet storm. Passengers near the gate were standing in small clusters, watching their phones, whispering, pointing toward the plane. The live stream had moved faster than any airport announcement ever could. By now, people at the gate knew more than they should have, and less than they thought they did. Inside first class, Grace remained standing beside seat 2A, her seat, the seat that had somehow become a mirror for everyone around it. Ashley held her phone with both hands now. She was no longer smiling. Her polished voice had dropped into something rawer. "I want to correct something," she said to her viewers. "Earlier, I called Ms. Mitchell a scammer. I repeated an accusation without proof. That was wrong." Her throat tightened. "I helped make this worse." Grace heard her but did not turn. Ashley's face flushed, not from embarrassment alone, from the strange pain of seeing yourself clearly in public. The businessman in the navy blazer stood slowly. His name was Charles Whitman, 68, retired insurance executive. A man who had spent his life believing good manners was the same as good character. He stepped into the aisle, careful not to get too close. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, "may I say something?" Grace looked at him. "You may." Charles rubbed his thumb over his wedding ring. "When Olivia accused you, I believed her because she sounded official. When you stood up for yourself, I thought you were making trouble because I was impatient. I cared more about my connection in Dallas than what was happening to you right in front of me." His voice broke slightly. "My granddaughter is mixed. She is 12, and I keep thinking, if this happened to her someday, I would pray someone spoke up sooner than I did." The cabin went very still. Grace's eyes softened just a little. "Then let that prayer change how you act," she said. Charles nodded. He sat down slowly, smaller than before, but perhaps more honest. Leonard Brooks leaned back beside his wife. He watched Charles with the tired tenderness of a man who had seen change arrive late, but still arrive. Hannah remained near the galley with Linda Carter. She had expected to feel relief after Olivia left. Instead, she felt a deep ache, the kind that comes when you realize how close you came to becoming part of something you knew was wrong. Linda touched her arm gently. "You did the right thing." Hannah shook her head. "Too late, maybe," Linda said. "But not never." Those words steadied her. At the front of the cabin, Officer Reyes finished taking Grace's statement. His voice was respectful and direct. "For the record, Ms. Mitchell, do you want airport police to take Ms. Parker into custody now?" The question landed heavily. Several passengers looked toward Grace, expecting the hammer to fall. Grace looked toward the open aircraft door. Olivia was no longer visible, but her absence still seemed to sit in the aisle. "No," Grace said. Officer Reyes paused. "You are certain?" "I am certain that the assault must be documented. I am certain that the investigation must continue. But I am not asking for her to be handcuffed in the terminal today." Ashley's phone trembled. Grace continued, voice steady. "What happened here was criminal in nature, yes, but it was also cultural. It was trained by silence, protected by assumptions, rewarded by passengers who wanted comfort more than fairness. Arresting one woman will not repair that by itself." Officer Reyes nodded slowly. He understood more than he said. Grace turned toward the cabin. "There will be consequences, serious ones. But I want them to teach something, not just end something." No one spoke. From the speakerphone, Elaine Porter from Corporate Counsel cleared her throat. "Grace, the board is asking what immediate action you want announced before the flight departs." Grace glanced at Hannah, at Linda, at Leonard, at Ashley, at the passengers who had become witnesses to themselves. "First," she said, "every passenger on this aircraft receives a written statement before takeoff explaining that the incident is under investigation and that witness videos may be requested." Linda nodded and began typing on her tablet. "Second, all crew involved in passenger conflict procedures will be retrained within 30 days, starting with this airport." Elaine answered, "Understood." "Third, I want a new rule drafted. No passenger may be removed for alleged ticket fraud until the manifest of identification and boarding record are verified by 2 separate employees." Hannah looked up sharply. That rule would have saved Grace from the slap. Maybe it would save someone else. Grace took a slow breath. "And fourth, I want Hannah Price protected from retaliation." Hannah's eyes filled instantly. Linda smiled faintly. Elaine's voice came through, noted, "Protected status effective immediately." Hannah pressed one hand to her mouth. Grace finally sat down in seat 2A. The leather seat creaked softly beneath her. The cabin seemed to exhale. A new captain arrived minutes later, a calm woman named Captain Denise Walker. She stepped into first class, removed her hat, and looked directly at Grace. "Miss Mitchell," she said, "I am sorry for what happened on our aircraft. We are ready to operate this flight safely when you are." Grace looked out the window at the ground crew waiting below. Then she looked back at the cabin. "We fly," she said, but her voice carried something deeper. "We fly differently now." By the time Flight 447 landed in Los Angeles, the video had already crossed the country. Grace Mitchell stepped into the terminal without sunglasses, without security surrounding her, without trying to hide the mark still faintly visible on her cheek. Cameras waited beyond the gate. Reporters called her name. Passengers slowed, whispering, watching the woman they had first seen standing alone in a first-class aisle. Grace did not stop for the cameras. Not yet. She turned back toward the passengers from her flight. Ashley stood a few feet away, phone lowered, eyes red from crying off and on during the flight. Charles Whitman stood beside his wife, shoulders bowed. Leonard Brooks watched quietly, his hand resting on his cane. Grace looked at them all. "Today was painful," she said, "but pain can become useful if it tells the truth." No one interrupted. Grace's voice was calm, but it carried. People nearby turned silent. What happened to me should not require a title to match. I should not have needed to be a chief executive officer for someone to question whether I deserved basic respect. Ashley wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. Charles looked down. Hannah Price stood near the jet bridge entrance, still in uniform, still shaken, but no longer hiding. Linda Carter stood beside her. Captain Denise Walker waited respectfully behind them. Grace continued. "Some of you recorded. Some of you judged. Some of you stayed silent. And some of you found your voice late. I am not asking anyone to pretend they were perfect today. I am asking you to remember what it felt like to see the truth arrive after the harm was already done." Her eyes moved to Hannah. "Because next time, someone may not have my position. They may not have a chairman calling. They may not have cameras watching. They may only have a quiet voice and a shaking hand." That was when Leonard spoke. "We will remember," he said. His wife nodded through tears. The words were simple, but this time, they did not sound like comfort. They sounded like a promise. Over the next week, Skyline Airways released the findings of its internal review. Olivia Parker was terminated for assault, destruction of travel documents, and false reporting. Harold Bennett was removed from supervisory duties, pending retraining and review. Captain William Foster retired early after the company found he had failed to follow verification procedures and had ignored available evidence. But Grace did not let the story end with firings. That would have been easy. Instead, she stood before every senior leader in Skyline's Atlanta training center, the same faded gray sweater folded on the table beside her like an exhibit. "This is not about one bad employee," she said. "It is about every policy that allowed a bad assumption to move faster than the truth." Skyline changed its rules within 30 days. No passenger could be removed over a ticket dispute until 2 separate employees verified the manifest identification and purchase record. Every discrimination complaint would trigger immediate review by a passenger rights team. Crew training would include real scenarios, not corporate slogans. And junior employees who spoke up would receive formal protection. Hannah became part of that training team. The first time she told the story, her voice shook. By the 10th time, it did not. She told new flight attendants that courage does not always feel brave. Sometimes it feels like fear with a job to do. Ashley changed too, though slower. Her apology video did not fix what she had done, but it was honest. She admitted she had chased attention before seeking truth. Months later, her channel began featuring stories of bystanders who chose to step in. Not perfectly, not loudly, just sooner. Grace returned to flying quietly, still in simple clothes, still carrying the same worn leather tote. On one morning flight to Denver, a young black college student boarded first class in a hoodie and backpack. He paused at the entrance, ready for the familiar look. The one that asked whether he belonged. The flight attendant smiled. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Ellis. Seat 2A is just to your left." Grace watched from across the aisle. The student smiled back, relieved in a way most people would never notice. But Grace noticed. She opened her laptop and began writing a message to all Skyline employees. "Respect is not premium service. It is the minimum. We do not offer dignity after someone proves who they are. We begin with it. Every passenger has a story before they have a seat number. Treat them like that story matters." She paused, looked out the window, and touched the place on her cheek where the mark had faded. The pain was gone. The lesson remained. And maybe that was how justice worked in real life. Not like thunder, not always like revenge. Sometimes justice was a policy rewritten. A witness speaking sooner, a young employee protected. A passenger welcomed without suspicion. Grace closed her laptop as the plane lifted into the morning sky. Below her, the city grew smaller, but the change did not. If this story stayed with you, carry it into the next room you enter. Speak when someone is being treated unfairly. Listen before you judge. And if you believe dignity should never depend on power, share this story with someone who needs to remember that silence is never neutral.